Right, welcome back. We're talking higher education today and training as well. I think that part often it gets left out of discussions when we're describing the work of this department. But let's talk to our guests, Dr. Blaine Zimande, Deputy Minister Mduduzi Manana, and the Chairperson SETA Forum, Joel Dikhole and Xolani Kubeka. They are from the Black Business Council. They are the panelists helping us chat and have this conversation. But we also have an audience here in Sandton who have put through some questions, and we're going to go straight to our tables now, get their questions and their thoughts to this conversation. And we start at table number 12 with Ruben Musiani. Ruben, what is your question? All right, I'm just going to get our guys to up your microphone. Yeah? All right, okay. So having said all of that about microphones working, yours isn't. So I'm going to put my hand up, unfortunately. We're going to get to you now. Is it working now?
Yes.
Ah, brilliant. There we go.
Yeah, I was saying the placement of TVET students as well as lecturers remains a challenge. So I just want to know what plans are in place to counter this. And my other question is based on NSFAS bursaries. According to the NSFAS bursary guideline, students staying beyond the 10-kilometer radius do not benefit in relation to the transport allowance. And we believe that this impacts negatively on our retention. So I just want to know what's the minister's take on that one. Thank you.
Okay, Ruben, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Bessie, who's on table number 10.
Thank you. My question is, for a young person who's out of school or for a parent, how do they access information on the skills training that is offered by SETAs? Where do they get this information? And also, can they apply directly to the SETAs?
Okay, thank you very much, Bessie. Let's go to Thabo Supuma, who's on table number 9. Thabo? Yeah, speak.
My question is around the mismatch of skills in the ICT industry. One of the biggest challenges that we face from a telecommunication neotel, it's as we look for skills to, or looking for new people to join us, we don't have the necessary skills around ICT. What are we doing around that? We have put a proposal to the Department of Higher Education around ICT skills that we think could add value in terms of creating new employment, but also creating new entrepreneurship. So for me, my question is, how can we work with the department as a private sector to address some of the skills shortage as we're talking about broadband penetration? Where are we going to get those skills to deploy the fiber across the country?
Okay, so thank you very much indeed to you, Thabo Supuma from Neotel. So 3 questions that have come through, and any one of you can answer those. But the first one is the placement of students in workplace and also teachers, I think, remains a challenge. How do we counter that challenge? Who'd like to address that?
Yeah, in fact, Peter, this question is very important because one of the most important things that we really need to be focusing on as a country is for employers, first of all, to ensure that there is training in their workplaces, obviously working with the SETAs and so on. But secondly, that their workplaces also are used for new or potential entrants as training spaces. Unfortunately, we have to face this reality in South Africa at the moment that historically South African employers have been used to cheap labor, unfortunately, and with minimum training. Even the training that was happening in the past of artisans, it was mainly your state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies. So one of the focus areas that we're dealing with as a department, together with everybody else, is to say to employers, come to the party. For instance, Peter, I've said this before, I have less time for employers who make a lot of noise about the fact that our colleges are not supplying the requisite skills. But what are they doing to ensure that, for instance, they partner with those colleges and that they open their workplaces for these students to actually get work placement? You know, our own information in our hands, by the way, is that 86% of our youngsters who have gone through learnerships, they get employed. So that is the partnership then that we need to be forging, including placement, by the way, you are right, of TVET college lecturers. Because we want those lecturers to be teaching something that is current, you know, in industry, current technology, and all that. The other question on
the NSFAS 10-kilometer radius transport allowance doesn't cover those people living within the 10-kilometer radius, and so people are falling off the radar.
Well, I think various institutions, there are general guidelines. Various institutions sometimes they do it differently in terms of the range of transport, the radius that they actually cover. Also depending on the geography and the location of some of the institutions. NSFAS does provide a lot of transport allowance, especially for TVET college students. It's not enough, but we do provide a transport allowance. It's an issue. Our goal as government, in terms of the National Development Plan, is that by the year 2030, at least we should have a TVET college or community college campus in every municipality. In that way, municipal district, in that way we would actually then reduce the need to be paying a lot of money in terms of transport allowance, because people will be within traveling a distance to those institutions. That is our goal that we are actually aiming at. But we do provide. Okay.
Well, whilst we're on the subject of NSFAS, this is a huge topic, particularly at the beginning of each year. So let's address that right now, and let's just see what we can do. Xolani says, why has NSFAS always got problems? That's his concern. There's people, obviously, that are burning for funding. And in fact, we've seen violent protests even result from this. And it would seem that you don't have enough money to help everybody. How are you going to overcome this? 9.5 billion certainly isn't enough, it would seem. And also we've got this concern by Mzolisi, who says, we have thousands of young people and elders still indebted by NSFAS. Why don't we write off this debt?
Yeah, very quickly. I think the starting point, it's with NSFAS, is that this is the ANC's government's one of the biggest achievements. That's where we should start before we talk about problems. Since the scheme started, Peter, it has supported, I'm sure by now, over 1.5 million students from poor backgrounds, most of whom overwhelmingly are first college or university graduates ever in their families. In fact, today we are proud of the growth of the black middle class. I guess NSFAS possibly is the single most possible contributor to the growth of the black middle class since 1994. And that over the last 5 years we've tripled NSFAS from 3 billion to just over 9 billion. There's no other budget item of government that has actually grown by such an amount. And we continue to assist many, many students. That should be our starting point. Of course it's not enough. In order to provide for everybody who would require assistance with a loan, we need 51 billion. That's the scale of what we're talking about. It's not enough, but government remains committed to expand. That is why this year, for the first time, we are reaching 9.5 billion. That's a lot of money. In 1 year, to be spent in 1 year, by the way, not in 5 years, to actually support poor students. Our own approach has been that because of the challenges that we have, it's important to engage all the stakeholders so that they understand the problem and what is to do. That's why we've met with students, the vice chancellors, and so on. Quickly on debt, no, we cannot write off the debt, unfortunately. You know, because it's how the scheme works, is that if we have gone through, finished your degree or your college diploma or certificate, you must then pay back. So that we are, in fact, it's universities. Those from colleges, they don't pay back. You have to do so in order to support those who are coming after you. You know, you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't allow to be assisted by NSFAS, knowing very well that you have to pay, and thereafter then when you are supposed to pay, you then say, no, let's write off the debt. We cannot do that. Instead, we are chasing more because there are many who are not paying. And we are discovering quite a number of them are civil servants, so they are closer to home. And we will be able to work with SARS and be able to get our money back.
Some of the violence that we're seeing on campuses, is this a sign of the desperation that those young people are facing?
The what?
It's the violence that we're seeing on campus.
Well, there can be no justification for violence, Peter, no matter what the problems are. Students have a right to protest, but I think the challenge for us as a country is, where can we get additional money? We as a department, we are already looking at, all the time, additional sources of funding for NSFAS, for infrastructure and so on. That's where we should actually be focusing. Of course, I understand if you're a student, you can't say, you can't wait for 5 years. If we say in 5 years' time we'll be able to do this. But violence, no, that's completely unacceptable, you know. It doesn't make sense. Sometimes some of our communities, you burn a library because you demand a clinic.
Okay. Mr. Kobeka, is there a role then for the private sector? We've got this funding gap. How can you help?
Well, I think from a private sector perspective, I think we need to also realign our allotment for training. I mean, as an example, there are a lot of companies taking people to Harvard, you know, etc. You know, we keep on training graduates. You know, therefore, there needs to be a realignment of our budget towards allotting more bursaries. But I think I just want perhaps to also divert and say part of what we are not doing as government is to use our balance sheet correctly, you know, particularly to look at developing skills. I mean, as an example, if you look at BRASA right now, BRASA will be rolling out 7,000 train coaches. And it's a tender of a project of about 100 billion rands. Now, we need to be able to make sure that for every major project, we make sure that we demand, you know, that unemployed learners should be placed, that there should be training that is aligned, I think, to those programs, you know, as it were. We also need to align ourselves to IPAP, which is our industrial plan. To what extent can we use new technologies, new programs, you know, to put more learners and so that they can learn on the job.
Is that not happening, Minister?
Well, it is happening to a certain extent, but we are not yet there. Olani is right. We can still do more as government along the lines of what he's suggesting. But it is happening. For example, one of the things that we've just finished as a department is skills plans for all your strategic integrated projects, the infrastructure development program. We know exactly now what skills we need in quantities and what levels and so on. We believe this will take us a long way towards addressing this gap that we've been having, because indeed as government, our commitment and what we're trying to do as a department is that every major government infrastructure project must also be a training space in order to supply the skills that we do not have.
Mr. Dechole, Bessie asked, how do young people access the CETA training, or the training that you facilitate? How do they get in contact, get into the system so that they can find a way forward?
Well, firstly, all CETAs have websites where information is available. Secondly, when every time you go through the newspapers, there are invitations for companies as well as providers to apply for all manner of initiatives and programs that CETAs are rolling out. And then thirdly, young people can contact CETA offices, they can phone offices and register their interest for training. But I think there must be an understanding that CETAs do not do the recruitment and selection. The selection still happens at company level. So the best we can do is to collate the information and share it with our stakeholders. I mean, in the retail sector, for instance, as many other sectors, we have almost 11,000 to 12,000 companies which are paying levies, which are looking at training young people, so we can get that information onto companies. I think perhaps one medium that we haven't also utilized as CETAs is the community radio stations. We need to get the information out there more and more on that platform. We do often also make use of our public broadcasting system. We go on radio and talk about all the programs that we are rolling out. So the information is there. I think it can be accessed.
As we're having this conversation, my mind keeps thinking about, this sounds very urban, very sort of big city driven. How are we dealing with the rural areas, Deputy Minister?
Look, 2 years ago we took a conscious decision and directed the CETAs to open offices in all the TVET colleges, the 50 TVET colleges, especially the rural and township campuses. We do have presence of the CETAs now there. Perhaps what the CETAs should be doing is to do a bit of outreach work, reaching out to the communities, because those CETA offices that are housed by the colleges are not there to service the college, but to service the surrounding communities. So I think in that way, we focus will move from your urban outlook to more rural and township. For a very long time, I mean, CETAs, would be your ivory towers. You'd find them in your Sandton, in your Bryanston, and all of those areas. But we are saying now they must do much more to reach out to rural youth in particular, so that they too are able to access some of these opportunities.
We partner with SABC, 10 radio stations, 9 African languages and Afrikaans, precisely in order to address the problem you're talking about, Peter, to reach. SABC reaches everywhere, SABC radio in particular, because we are quite conscious. We have got a career guidance program called KETA, which we run partly, as I say, with the SABC, plus also to reach out to rural and township schools.
The last question from Thabo is interesting to me. He's talking about the skills mismatch, what they need and what's being taught, and he's asking what they can do to help. But isn't this what you're doing as a CETA, to bring people together to solve these issues? So how is it that he's asking this question? He should know already how he can be part of this.
Well, there is a CETA called the MICT CETA, which focuses on the ICT sector. So I would recommend that he gets in touch with the colleagues from that CETA who will be able to clearly unpack his proposal. But what I need to say, Peter, is that we do get a lot of people coming forward with initiatives that can also help deal with some of the skills challenges of our country. And I think all SETAs are open to ideas. And so what I would suggest to Thabo is that the first point of call is to get in touch with the SETA, and I'm sure they will be able to address his issue.
Minister, a lot of this funding, I read it says funding for critical skills, science, commerce, health science, engineering is an area of focus. Does that mean the arts fall off the radar completely?
No, not at all, not at all. We have identified what we call critical or scarce skills, that are not in the supply at the level at which we need. So we are obviously focusing on that. But we are acutely aware as a department that there is a danger. The unintended consequence of that could be that then your humanities and social sciences fall by the wayside. In fact, that has been beginning to happen in our universities in particular. We've made a specific intervention. We've established an institute of humanities and social sciences whose aim is actually to catalyze humanities and social science project. It's a wonderful project. I hope one day we will talk about it. It's just taken 150 PhD students, mainly black, which we are short of, and so on, in the humanities and social sciences, because a country like South Africa can't afford. We've got a lot to teach the world, by the way, in the humanities and social sciences, given where we come from. So that's the balance we're actually trying to strike as a country, because also even when we train engineers, by the way, accountants and so on, we don't want to train robots, people who do not understand the society in which they function. Ideally, where we would like to get to be is that every college and university student must do a little bit of sociology, psychology, anthropology, and so on. Some universities are beginning to do that, have some critical thinking skills that are vital irrespective of the profession or the occupation you're in.
All right, we're going to take another break, but after that we're going to hear from Mario Landman, Gustav van Rensburg, and Siviwe Magidi after the break. But also a question I'm going to ask you about, I'll tell you after this actually, I don't want to warn you. Okay, stay with us for that.